This is Radio Caravan, the world news read by Shabnam Modgil. President Trump concluded the Republican National Convention with a speech that lasted over an hour and a grand finale fireworks show, which at one point spelled out Trump 2020. The fourth and final night also featured one of the highest-profile speaker lists of the week. President Trump refused to allow the coronavirus to deny him the crowd he craved for at the Republican National Convention. He ordered up a scene never before seen at the White House, an American president using the South Lawn as the official backdrop for such overtly political activity. The federal guidelines about keeping distance, avoiding crowds, and wearing masks to fight the spread of the virus were emphatically ignored. President Trump took center stage on this final night of the Republican National Convention and delivered a speech that sought to assure voters that despite more than 180,000 COVID-19 deaths and a badly damaged U.S. economy amid the pandemic, he had made good on his promise to make America great again. After 4 nights of scalding and often shouted slash-and-burn attacks directed at Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, it was quite a shock last night when he nearly lulled America to sleep with his Republican National Convention speech on the South Lawns of the White House. In this defiant speech accepting the nomination that went on for more than an hour and contained 5,600 words. President Trump claimed accomplishments he didn't earn on the pandemic, energy and veterans at the convention finale yesterday that also heard Black Lives Matter baselessly accused of coordinating violent protests across the country. When you speak for an hour and 10 minutes, you're bound to make a flub or two, and President Trump made a few notable ones during his speech. Released right before the start of the final night of the convention, the Lincoln Project's latest ad, Decency, calls out President Trump for his mocking of a disabled reporter. Ivanka Trump, President Trump's elder daughter and senior advisor, used her speech at the convention yesterday to try to humanize her father and recast him as a Washington outsider and unapologetic warrior for the forgotten men and women of this country. Fresh from accepting the Republican nomination with a sweeping attack on Joe Biden, President Trump travels to New Hampshire today to bring his re-election argument to a state he hopes to flip to his column in November. Tens of thousands of protesters seeking criminal justice reform are planning to gather at the National Mall today under the rallying cry, "Get your knee off our necks," a reference to the manner in which George Floyd was killed while in police custody. Capping a week of protests and outrage over the police shooting of a black man in Wisconsin, civil rights advocates will highlight the scourge of police and vigilante violence against black Americans at this commemoration of the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Thousands are expected at the steps of the Lincoln Memorial today, where the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his historic "I Have a Dream" address, a vision of racial equality that remains elusive for millions of Americans. A 17-year-old accused of killing 2 protesters and injuring another with an AR-15-style rifle in Kenosha, Wisconsin, has been charged as an adult with 2 counts of first-degree homicide and 1 count of attempted homicide. The teen, Kyle Rittenhouse, also faces charges of recklessly endangering the safety of 2 other victims and possessing a weapon while under the age of 18. At least 6 people were killed by Hurricane Laura in Louisiana, and search teams may find more victims, but the governor said that the most powerful storm to make landfall in the U.S. state in living memory did not cause the catastrophic damage that had been feared. Remnants of Hurricane Laura unleashed heavy rain and twisters hundreds of miles inland from a path of death and mangled buildings along the Gulf Coast, and forecasters warn of new dangers as the tropical weather blows towards the eastern seaboard this weekend. Governor Greg Abbott traveled to southeast Texas to survey the damage from Hurricane Laura. A Russian submarine surfaced near Alaska during a Russian war game exercise. The North American Aerospace Defense Command and U.S. Northern Command are closely monitoring the submarine. And the United States and most of the rest of the UN Security Council dug in their heels in diametrically opposed positions over the restoration of international sanctions on Iran. Floodwaters in Sudan have reached the highest levels on record, killing dozens of people, destroying thousands of homes, and encouraging and encroaching on some neighborhoods of the capital of Khartoum. After heavy seasonal rainfall for about a week in northern and eastern Afghanistan, severe floods hit the Parwan province. Authorities have evacuated more than 900 families from the province, and over 1,500 houses were destroyed in the floods. And meanwhile, Taliban fighters killed 4 of those civilians who were fleeing areas hit by the devastating floods during clashes with Afghan forces in Parwan province. The office of Lebanon's president said today that binding consultations with members of parliament to designate a new prime minister will begin early next week. And the UN Security Council is voting on a resolution that would extend the mandate of the UN peacekeeping mission in southern Lebanon for a year, but reduce its troop ceiling from 15,000 to 13,000 in response to U.S. pressure. The Israeli military says it struck militant targets in Gaza, including a weapons manufacturing site, after 6 rockets were fired from the territory early this morning. The heads of state of the West African Economic Bloc are holding a virtual extraordinary summit today to discuss Mali after negotiations with the junta that staged a coup last week failed to agree on a timeline for a civilian transitional government. The United Nations rights chief has called today on the Democratic Republic of Congo to swiftly investigate death threats against Nobel Peace Prize laureate Denis Mukwege and bring those responsible to justice. A German-flagged charity boat says it has been waiting for several days for port permission so it can disembark 201 migrants rescued in the central Mediterranean. The charity Sea-Watch said that the migrants were rescued earlier in the week by the ship Sea-Watch 4 and that Malta rejected its port request. Turkey announced new naval exercises near its shores and accused France of bullying as the conflict over Mediterranean energy riches risked turning into a military standoff. Belarus president comments that Warsaw may be plotting to seize part of the country if its political crisis worsened, and those are unacceptable. In a surprise move, Serbia has joined the European Union in its rejection of the election results in Belarus and criticism of a crackdown against those protesting against the country's longtime autocratic leader. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Radio Caravan. American B-52 Stratofortress bombers were flying over all 30 NATO countries today in an exercise the U.S. military said was meant to demonstrate the alliance's solidarity amid growing signs of cracks. Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has announced his resignation today due to his ill health, a bombshell development that kicks off a leadership contest in the world's third-largest economy. 65-year-old Shinzo Abe bowed in apology as he confirmed in a press conference that he was stepping down after nearly 8 years at the political helm following a recurrence of a chronic inflammatory bowel condition. And his announcement brings to an end weeks of intense media speculation surrounding his health. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has visited a rice-growing area devastated by a typhoon yesterday as the reclusive country reels from back-to-back natural and man-made catastrophes. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen vowed today to defend the island with a solid air force as she launched a U.S.-backed maintenance center for the island's fleet of upgraded F-16 fighters amid rising tensions between Taipei and Beijing. As India and China continue to be in a border dispute deadlock, Beijing has started laying fiber optics cables and installing other equipment for fifth-generation wireless technology, commonly known as 5G, along the line of actual control. The Chinese People's Liberation Army troops were also found constructing barracks and other structures near the Pangong Lake. And a 14-day quarantine rule in Abu Dhabi has put the Kolkata Knight Riders and Mumbai Indians, the two IPL teams based there, in a spot. Khel Ratna, Rohit Sharma and Arjuna Award winner Ishant Sharma, who are both in the United Arab Emirates for the IPL, will miss the National Sports Awards ceremony today. India is on course to have an approved vaccine within the first quarter of calendar year 2021, and Pune-based Serum Institute of India, the world's largest vaccine manufacturer by volume, is well placed to deliver this first vaccine. According to the Union Ministry's information, India has crossed the 3.3 million mark after recording an all-time high number of COVID-19 cases within 24 hours. Despite the addition of 75,760 fresh cases, the Health Ministry reinstated that only 21.87% of cases were active. COVID-19 tests in Delhi will soon be doubled to 40,000 per day as part of measures to contain the increase in the number of coronavirus cases in the city. At a time when fear of COVID-19 is still forcing people to stay back home, the majority of trains heading towards metro cities like Delhi and Mumbai, besides cities in Gujarat, are running packed, and railway officials call it a possible reverse migration that has left the majority of Mumbai and Delhi-bound trains with no room. As many as 346 personnel of the Maharashtra police have tested positive for coronavirus, and a mental health study done on over 8,000 Indians to capture stress levels of Indians during the lockdown has found that Mumbai was the most stressed. And the Supreme Court sought responses from the union and state governments on a PIL seeking a shift in the education policy to focus on digitally empowering students. This morning, the water level of the Yamuna River at Delhi's old railway bridge was recorded at 204.3 meters. And India demanded Pakistan should prosecute the perpetrators of the 2019 Pulwama terror attack and 2008 Mumbai carnage, saying the main accused in last year's suicide bombing, Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Masood Azhar, continues to be sheltered by Islamabad. The Foreign Office in Islamabad accused India of blocking the implementation of the International Court of Justice's verdict in Kulbhushan Jadhav's case by not cooperating in the legal proceedings in the Islamabad High Court. Prime Minister Imran Khan said that allowing former Premier Nawaz Sharif to leave the country was a mistake and that his government regretted that decision. Sindh Chief Minister Murad Ali Shah headed out on a tour of Karachi today, a day after the city was wrecked by record torrential rains that led to the deaths of at least 19 people. And a fresh monsoon spell which wreaked havoc on other parts of the country also caused devastation in parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, claiming the lives of 16 people and injuring 8 others. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have in the news for you today.